Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast. I'm Timur Durrani, technology reporter with the Globe and Mail, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which the Globe and Mail headquarters are situated is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis Nations, and the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. We aren't anticipating any technical issues, but we appreciate your patience should any issue arise. If you need technical help, please click the help desk icon at the bottom of your screen. Today's webcast is about cloud computing. We will be discussing the ways that cloud computing can be used to help innovate, transform, and scale businesses. Our discussions will be centered around the decisions and strategies required to use it effectively now and in the future. During the last 10 minutes of the panel, we will be answering audience questions. If you have any questions for our panelists, please type them in the virtual Q&A box. On behalf of the Globe and Mail, I would like to recognize IBM for supporting today's event. Well, let's get started. Joining us today, we have Shazia Sebsabani, the Vice President of Customer Network Implementation at TELUS Communications. Hi, Shazia. We have Marcus Buckle, the Sales Director for IBM Cloud Canada. And we have Kin Lee Yao, CAA's CIO. And Matthew Trushinsky, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Arctic Wolf. Welcome all, and thank you for being here. Let's start by having each of you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. Shazia, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Timur. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this distinguished panel. I would like to first begin by acknowledging that I'm joining this call from the traditional territories of people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. I support the deployment of our next-gen wireline network and its associated technologies at TELUS. Our key focus is to create a strong platform through fast and reliable connectivity, which supports the delivery of services and applications to address health, education, entertainment, and security needs of our customers and communities, leading to fantastic social and economic outcomes for the communities we operate in. I also have the honor of supporting TELUS's Reconciliation Action Plan, which was shared and communicated publicly last year in September. With that commitment, TELUS becomes the first publicly traded technology company to make such a commitment. I'm also a champion of gender diversity and support those efforts through my board position at Women in Communication and Technology, my advisory role at TELUS's Diversity and Inclusion Council, and as a coach at University of Calgary and Calgary Immigrant Society. I cannot wait to share some examples from TELUS that how we have been using cloudification to improve our overall operations and the experience for our customers. Very glad to be on this forum today.
Thanks, Shazia. How about you, Marcus? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, so Marcus Buckle. I am responsible for IBM Cloud in Canada. I run a team of sales, pre-sales, technical, and customer success. And our job is helping our clients understand how they can use cloud computing technologies, both in IBM Cloud as well as in a hybrid multi-cloud environment, particularly around capabilities such as AI, ML, data analytics, and those types of things. From my personal perspective, I've spent all my career in technology. I have a background in consulting, moving through business transformation, open source, and now into cloud. Thanks, Timur.
Thanks. Kin, how about you?
My name is Kin Lee Yao. I'm the CIO for CAA Club Group. And for those of you who probably don't know CAA, I would probably think that you guys know about our tow trucks. But CAA Club Group doesn't consist just about our roadside. We do have home and auto insurance. We have travel medical insurance as well. So in all, there are 5 different entities that comes together to form CAA Club Group. And we've just launched our new slogan, which is driven by good, because I think that's the piece that for us, for whatever we're doing, is we're trying to help our members to keep them safe and, to do it out of the goodness of our heart, to try to bring that piece in there, because there's so many issues today that people have in terms of mental stress and all these things. So our goal is to try to, how much can we actually contribute back to the community? That's about CAA. About myself, I've been with the company for slightly over 10 years. I've spent most of my career on the technology side, quite a few years, decades ago. So, started with the whole internet piece, spent time with the banking institution, the retail side, payment processing, and so forth. So I know a little bit about the technology aspect.
Thank you, Ken. How about you, Matthew? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. I'm so happy to be here. What a great panel. So I work for a company called Arctic Wolf. It's a cybersecurity company that's built here in Canada. We have our offices in Waterloo as well as an office in the US. But our goal is really to help customers operationalize all their security investments to the point where they can feel really confident in their security posture and really be, assured that they're not going to be a victim of an attack, a breach, or a data loss event. That's our goal. Obviously, cloud is a huge component of our overall attack surface monitoring capabilities. And cloud telemetry and information from the cloud is a huge source of us being able to protect our customers. So really happy to be here today to just kind of share the security and cybersecurity aspect of cloud with this group. Personally, I'm a Waterloo native. I'm super into technology. I actually started here as a broadcaster myself, and then eventually kind of moved over to the technology side. And I've been working in technology with relation to cloud for the past 8-9 years, everything from working with customers and carrier networks like TELUS, who I know we have on the call today, to working on edge computing and smart city, smart traffic technology, all the way now to cybersecurity. So kind of a grab bag of experience, but cloud certainly is formational to a lot of what we've done to date.
Thanks, Matt. So I'll follow up with you guys and start off the panel with kind of talking a little bit about how you utilize the cloud in your operations and sort of day-to-day work. I'll start off with Marcus. How about you tell us a little bit about, how you utilize the cloud in your operations and day-to-day work, and really what your approach to cloud-based solutions are, whether that's changed during the pandemic, things like that.
Yeah, so I think a large part of what IBM Cloud is about is enabling our clients to use cloud-based technologies. And so I think a little bit of that is understanding how that evolution has started to come about. When we look at the cloud market today, we see that generally speaking, the industry says about 20% of cloud workloads have moved out of clients' data centers into the cloud. And the question really is, how has that sort of evolution come about, and how has that been affected by COVID? And if you look at the nature of what those workloads are, I think we'd say, the 20% has typically been the outside in. So that's the ways that our customers interact with our companies. So think about software as a service-based capabilities, whether it's Salesforce, a CRM, whether it's Adobe for customer experience. These are things that evolved or were born on the cloud. They were relatively straightforward to integrate into clients' organizations. And as COVID has taken place, those things have proliferated, digitization has advanced even faster. Now what clients are looking for is saying, how do I move the other 80%? How do I take advantage of what that internal piece is? And that's where some of the challenges now start to come about, because that 80% is more the inside out. How do clients serve customers versus how do customers interact with clients? And those things tend to be things that have grown up within companies. They are long running, they're complicated. Think of things like mortgage processing. It's not quite the same as buying something on Amazon where you can just abandon your cart. Once you've actually signed all that paperwork and it goes through that process, that's a long running process in a bank that trying to unwind becomes quite difficult. So I think this is where we are now from an IBM Cloud perspective, starting to help our clients understand how they can use these kinds of technologies to transform the way their businesses are working, to help them with that digitization journey, particularly in the light of how COVID has actually started to force us to change our habits, change our lifestyles, and change the way we work and do business.
Shazia, how about you tell us a little bit about that? How at TELUS you utilize the cloud in your operations and day-to-day work, and maybe how perhaps the pandemic might have changed that.
Yeah, a really great question. Pandemic has definitely propelled the cloudification and digitization. When the physical networks were broken down, physical isolation really encouraged that virtual integration. At TELUS, we have been operating in that virtual environment for the last 10 years. So we were very well positioned to respond to the pandemic, but we too had to pivot a lot and had to adjust a lot. And we look at that as an opportunity to further optimize the experience for our team members by addressing the changing requirements around physical workspace, technology, and culture. So leveraging the technology platforms and collaboration tools effectively was the key focus for us at TELUS. That allowed us to create a balance between flexibility and well-being of our teams. Things like an accelerated rollout of Google Workspace, coupled with appropriate hardware choices for internal team members, and a well-established API library to encourage the integration with our external vendors has been the key focuses. There are two kind of use cases that I share with you. One is internal teams and how we've been using the cloud there. We are a national team, spread from coast to coast and working from either from the comfort of our homes or on the go. So in that scenario, connectivity, collaboration, accessibility, and security of the information is the key for the contribution of our team members. No one project is the same. New inputs, new stakeholders, new geographies. This is just not possible if we are not living and breathing in that cloud ecosystem, because that is what really allow us multi-tenancy, easy exchange of information, easy hands-off. So that really helped our team not to even remain productive, but to become more efficient. The second use case I'll share is around the connectivity with our vendors. Most of our work is performed in a highly collaborative environment where it's internal, external coordination and collaboration. We work with global partners in different aspects of our operations, different time zones, different systems, different applications. Cloud-based approach has allowed us to break those barriers and silos and allow us to integrate various streams of data and information to create an effective and efficient value delivery chain. I'll share a very small example of bringing fiber to a multi-dwelling. So that process actually starts with doing the physical walkthrough and doing the design. At that time, when our team members are at that location, they're putting the input for the specific material requirement right there, which through API is shared with our distributor. And through their API, it's shared with our vendors for right supply operations to be enabled at the right time. So the benefits and the advantages that we have seen are huge and still growing.
Mm-hmm. Some very interesting points there for sure. And we'll definitely come back to some of them as well. I want to talk to you, Ken, now about what your day-to-day operations look like with the cloud, and how the pandemic might have changed that.
So when we look at the cloud, I think one of the piece I look at it is to say it's a cloud service, right? So everything else is a service. For example, we are using Teams, and this is a cloud service that we have to allow that facilitation, the collaboration, that we can see each other. So that is one of the things that we do. But you also have the component like email exchange. In the past, we used to have an exchange server on site and all that. All these is now being commoditized. And for us, we use Microsoft 365 to do that. We also use weather API. Instead of us going and finding our own weather station, putting all these equipment in place, we now can consume a service. Cyber, I think Matt is going to talk more about cyber. But the bare fact that we are online has given us more exposure to cyber threats. So how do we actually protect from that? And we know we don't have all the expertise from a cyber standpoint, from a security expert, but we consume services that helps us protect our environment. So it goes back to the piece where, for me, it's really understanding the cloud services that we get. We're not looking at it to sort of say, oh, you know what, cloud is something great, let's go have fun with it. But it has to make sense and apply it where it's actually going to give you efficiency, collaboration, and actually a competitive advantage, right? So we use Google Maps for our routing in terms of understanding where we need to position our next trucks. The map is there, but we have built our own machine learning algorithm to actually learn and predict where incidents going to happen. But in order to display that on a map, we're not going to build the map that Google has already done. So we actually consume that service, right? So wherever we can actually consume services to actually help us, that's what we do. We don't just go say, okay, well, we'll move everything to the cloud and it's all done. So hopefully that makes a sense in terms of how we're selective in terms of what we use and how we differentiate it.
Matt, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day sort of operations and how they might have changed with the cloud during the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll talk about it in two kind of different ways. One is our own use of the cloud here at Arctic Wolf. So our entire security platform was built on cloud. We're cloud native. And the amount of data and raw data that we ingest into our platform, especially during the growth of the pandemic, has been absolutely astonishing. We process about 2 trillion events per week through our kind of cloud platform, and which equates to about being 2.5 petabytes of data a week. So, we are ingesting a huge amount of cloud information and kind of organizing and processing and turning all that information into security data that can stop something like ransomware or business email compromise attacks. That's kind of where our focus has been. Obviously, with the pandemic and like every other business, we've seen an explosion in the just amount of attack surface presented by the cloud. So you can imagine with infrastructure moving to cloud, applications moving to cloud, all that needs to be done very quickly to achieve our business goals, obviously, but also needs to be done securely. And that's where our focus has been, is how do we help all our customers move to the cloud, but do it in a way that doesn't present additional business risk, and is doing it in a way that really secures them against these kind of attacks that are kind of incredibly on the rise every single year. So we see about half of all security events, half of all security breaches include some sort of cloud component. So this explosion in cloud and cloud adoption presents a huge security risk. So that's our focus here at Arctic Wolf, is really mitigating that security risk on behalf of our customers.
I'll stick with you for this question, and then I'll bring it to the rest of the panels, Matt. We've all talked a little bit now about leveraging cloud-based solutions, but I now want to bring up, whether any of these new services or products, whether they emerged out of this leveraging that all of you guys sort of did with your companies and in your, portfolios and whatnot. Tell us a little bit about that, Matt, with yours, with Arctic. What happened there?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So one of the things that we do is we ingest telemetry from what would constitute the entirety of an attack surface within a customer, right? So your identity systems, your authentication systems, your cloud storage, everything that you would do in the cloud. And with our customers adopting more cloud technologies, we really wanted to make sure that we had integrations with all those cloud systems. So over the course of the pandemic, we've been building a lot of hooks into sources of cloud data. So that way, all that data can be received by the Arctic Wolf platform and processed for security, telemetry and security investigations and alerting. So things like Google Cloud Platform, we released that integration during the pandemic. So really, our R&D was all entirely focused on, we have this explosion of cloud infrastructure and this explosion of exposure across the cloud attack surface, how can we pivot our roadmaps and our investment into making sure that this move to cloud, we can ingest all that information on behalf of our customers and use that information to ultimately keep them safe.
Ken, I'll go to you for a bit. Tell me about whether any services or products emerged from your company, resulting with leveraging cloud-based solutions.
We haven't. I mean, in terms of products, like I said, we have got some new products. For example, CA My Pace, which is the pay-as-you-go insurance basis. So if you think about the driving, the telemetry data that comes, it goes through the entire network, whether we want to consider that as a cloud per se. It's a service that we utilize to actually get us the telemetry data so that we can put it back into our system so that we can actually provide people to sort of say, you know what, here's how much you've driven and here's how much it's going to cost you so that they can keep purchasing that. So CA My Pace has done really well during the pandemic. We actually developed that not because of the pandemic. We actually had developed that prior to the pandemic, thinking about people who's not going to drive a lot. The pandemic happened and people were not driving a lot, so that was kind of a bonus. And that's just one. But we also have, like I said, we developed the application for predicting where breakdown is going to happen in our emergency roadside side. And that is using some telemetry from the Weather Channel, IBM Weather Channel, from Google. So all these stuff we actually put together, and it's not really because of the pandemic, but you know what, going back to the piece, we tend to utilize where the services would make sense and make us more efficient, right? So that has been our approach, and it hasn't changed from a pre-pandemic to a post-pandemic standpoint. So we constantly are looking at that piece, and that hasn't changed at all. We haven't changed our approach.
That's interesting. I mean, this is why we get, a variety of sort of, voices with these panels, because we get to, be able to tell people that it's not the same from company to company. Shazia, how about you? Has there been any, services or products that have emerged? Because you talked a little bit about this before, but has there been any, specific services or products you can tell us a little bit about with leveraging cloud-based solutions that emerged?
Yeah, definitely. I think I would say not emerged, but definitely enhanced, right? And before I talk about it, I do want to highlight a couple of features that cloud-based applications do enable for a company like us, a technology company. So one is, when you think about the cloud applications, it's seamless integration, right? You can bring different sources of data. You can actually create a seamless integration between different workflows and the handoffs. And then the second thing, which is very interesting about, is that now ML, AI becomes a lot more doable, right? So you can actually dive into the data lakes, and then you can use that information more effectively, because companies have been collecting a lot of customer data for the last many decades, but we have not been able to very effectively use that data to create better services and products for the customers. But cloud-based applications allow us to do that. So two things I will share where we have been able to enhance what we were already offering. The first product that I would like to discuss is the smart home security, which is powered and enabled through our Pure Fiber technology. But what it does is that in your home ecosystem, everything is well sunk. Whether it is water management, whether it is power management, whether it is the actual security of your place or managing your Wi-Fi solution, you can do it now all into a well-integrated platform, which is enabled through My TELUS app. Right? You can also exercise certain security protocols on the use of certain streams of data within the house, right? You can put certain parental controls over who's using, when they're using. For example, when I get angry with my teenager son, that's the time to cut him off from the Wi-Fi, right? And then he stops breathing. The second thing that I would like to share is TELUS Health My Care app, right? Which is a virtual, fully digitized platform to have access to healthcare. And that is such a great application that brings together the end-to-end delivery chain within the health vertical, which is from the consultation with the doctor to the pharmacy, to the delivery of the prescription to your house. Today, every 30 seconds, that app is actually downloaded by someone across this country, and every 90 seconds, a consultation is taking place, right? So that type of integration where we can bring everybody to the same platform and the entire value delivery chain can be enabled from consultation right to the prescription delivery was not possible without leveraging the strong cloud-based platform.
Mm-hmm. And Marcus, tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, have there any been, services or products that have emerged based on the leveraging of cloud-based solutions?
I don't think I'd necessarily say that our portfolio has evolved because of the pandemic. I would say certain things have accelerated because of the demand that we see from our clients. And Kin and Matt and Shazia have all touched on some of these topics in terms of, security, encryption, these types of threats. If you look at some of the latest capabilities that IBM Cloud is rolling out to address some of these concerns, you can look at the encryption levels that we now have available to clients that are at the highest level encryption available at FIPS 140-2 level 4. We've also seen an increase in demand for clients asking to be able to keep their own security keys. This is very important for regulated industries where if for any reason IBM was subpoenaed to hand over data, we wouldn't actually be able to hand over the data because it is encrypted with a key that the client owns, not one that IBM can access. So we've seen, perhaps as a corollary of advanced digitization, the need for more cloud capability, the increased security and risks that can bring, increased demand for certain types of our security and risk and compliance type offerings. So that's one thing that I think we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I would add to that, there are other knock-on effects that COVID has perhaps created with regards to the supply chains that have then further advanced the demand for what IBM calls hybrid and multi-cloud computing. I mean, really, that's probably an industry term. I don't think I should claim IBM owns that one. But by that, I mean, if you look at what's happened in terms of chip manufacturing and the constraints there, we see a lot of clients now not able to get equipment into their own data centers. So the need for that sort of cloud type of elasticity that the industry has always promised has increased in demand. But at the same time, and I think Kin sort of touched on this, getting to cloud is a journey. It's not a destination, right? It's all about a transformation of how you're going to move from one environment to another as part of a business transformation, not just as a means of getting out of one place and getting somewhere else. And as part of that journey, and as part of some of the challenges that the supply chain has created, what we're seeing clients ask for is the ability to be able to take a given application or a workload, maybe because they can't scale out their own environment, scale it out onto an IBM environment, then potentially be able to repatriate it without being locked into a given environment. And that portability is also a very important aspect of what I think clients need to consider, because it's about getting the right workload at the right place for the right capability. And that is a fundamental of what we're now seeing, and something that COVID and the pandemic has not necessarily changed the way that IBM is approaching these things, but it's certainly accelerated the demand, and therefore IBM is accelerating its ability to meet what clients are looking for.
I'm going to ask you guys some specific questions now. So, and I'll start with you, Marcus, and I'll stick with you for this one. For a minute, tell me a little bit about, what the traditional model of cloud looked like and how that might have evolved just now. What does that look like now when we're looking at this?
Yeah, definitely. So I sort of touched a little bit on that sort of why have we seen 20%, and that's sort of the easy stuff, the software as a service, the collaboration, some of the things that we've talked about. But if I then look at where is the industry now going and where are the challenges, I talked about that outside in, those long running business processes that may have multiple applications involved in achieving a certain thing. If I think about how cloud computing has evolved, I see it very much as, it almost started like Lego bricks. So it was kind of like infrastructure as a service is a collection of compute resources that clients assemble together in order to achieve a given outcome. And that's not that much different from what they were probably doing in their own data centers, except now they're doing it in a cloud service provider's data center. So the next evolution that we've seen, and we're already going through this quite quickly now, is a demand for what I would call platform as a service. So that's where the CSP, the cloud service provider, isn't just managing some of the underlying infrastructure, so the bare metal. It's now managing more of the operational systems level. So the databases, the OSs, those kind of capabilities, VMware. So that demand for platform as a service is evolving very quickly, because clients are saying, how do we free up some of our people who are doing these things to focus on things that are going to drive greater innovation within our business? The next sort of evolution that I see happening very quickly now is a move to hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. And I'm actually going to draw a parallel with the telecommunications environment for a second. So when we think about telcos, there isn't a single telco in the world that can serve every capability. It is a fragmented, in a very positive way, a fragmented industry that serves specific capabilities, whether you're a wholesale provider or a wireless provider or a landline provider or high-speed provider, or you provide B2B or peering. All of these different things, there are many companies serving niche purposes within that end-to-end chain of communication. I see cloud evolving now as we go past the IaaS, the PaaS, the SaaS. I see cloud evolving in this way. And as the complexities of those internal workloads we talked about, the variety of compute resources that are required to enable those things, I see the same fragmentation now within the cloud industry, where you are going to look for the correct cloud provider to serve a certain capability. IBM is pushing in the direction of how do we help clients address regulated concerns and industry-related clouds. We're also heading in the direction with TELUS, incidentally, around multi-access edge computing. And so the ability to combine IBM's cloud capabilities with TELUS's leading edge 5G capabilities and actually provide those things into remote locations or anywhere where you need workloads that are running as close to where the source of the output or the insight needs to be. And so, I see this evolution, IaaS through PaaS, like those Lego bricks, evolving now into a more fragmented industry where you put your workloads where they need to be to leverage the best capability of the environment. And different cloud providers will focus on different areas in the same way as the telecommunication industry is matured, and different people play in an end-to-end chain.
I'll get to you, Shazia, in a second, but some people that might be tuning in just now are not going to know a lot about the cloud. Let's imagine they don't. They tuned into this for some reason. Tell me a little bit, about what might be some misconceptions, or common misunderstandings people might have about the cloud-based applications before we move again back into these very specific things we're talking about here.
One of the biggest misunderstanding about the cloud, really, I'm going to take that from an end user standpoint, is, the vendor is going to take care of everything. And I know I have some salespeople on the call, but from a sales standpoint, it's like, everything is going to be taken care of. It's going to be up. You won't have any breach. We have more people who can handle everything else, and it's great. You just have to look, even for last year, in the month of November, December, how many times Amazon, who's supposed not to go down at all, have been out, right? So the piece that we have to look at it says, it is still being managed. There's still people who's going to manage that piece. So from a technology standpoint, what you have to look at is to sort of say, yes, someone else is maybe running that for you, but you need to understand what they're running for you. You still need to stay on top of that. It may be a shift from people management, having your own people managing it, to a vendor management relationship. But from a technology owner standpoint, you still need to own that service. Not to say, wash your hand with it, somebody else is taking care of it. It's all fine and dandy, right? That's why I go back. Cloud-based application is still at the end. It's a tool. We need to understand how we're going to apply it. Where is it going to fit in the right place in our organization? I think Marcus touched base on that a little bit, because cloud service for one organization may be great. For the other one, it may not work, right? And so when I look at it from that piece, we just have to make sure what we are getting into, right? Security is another piece. We think that, we put the stuff on Amazon is going to take care of the whole security stuff. I've heard that a lot. But guess what happened? There's still people you have your folks who have to configure it. And if they don't pay attention to the configuration, this is where the breach happened. We've all heard about Capital One, right? These things happen. So what happens if you put your services up there? You're utilizing an application. What happens to resiliency, right? So if this is no longer available, what's your backup plan? The other aspect you need to understand, you now are part of a pool. So if it goes down, everybody who is using that service is down. How critical is that to your service? So these balances still have to be there. Not the fact that, hey, my God, I've gone to the cloud. It's fluffy. It's under the sky. Everything is going to be taken care of. You don't have to worry. It's a big misunderstanding. And people still need to make sure that they fully understand that component. That from a technology standpoint, if you're responsible for the technology, you're still accountable for that service that you've outsourced.
I'll go to Shazia and then I'll go to Matt. Shazia, there's been some things that we've been mentioned a little bit that Mark talked about. So I'll get you to talk about that as well. But I really want to specifically also ask you about something you mentioned earlier, a really interesting term, cloudification. So, how might that cloudification impacted, operations and supply chain management for TELUS?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I think we are a customer-focused organization, right? Committed to giving choice, flexibility, reliability, and a seamless experience to our customers. And it really starts with giving them the right connectivity, whether it's from a wireless perspective or from a wireline perspective. And Timur, I think that's where you're hitting on it, that to actually build the network, it's not that simple, right? You need to be in the right combination with the right type of resources at the right place at the right time to enable it. There is labor and then there is material, and we all are aware of the supply chain issues and the supply chain challenges that we have experienced over the last 2 years. Cloudification, I think a couple of features that are very, very attractive to operations. One is the multi-tenancy. You can actually invite multiple vendors, you can invite multiple applications and multiple streams of data and information to really come to a single platform and being integrated and talking to each other at the right points with the right information and data points. Also, the approval workflows can be automated and can be seamlessly driven from one milestone to another, which is the heart and soul of operations, right? Because operation is really knitting things together at the right intervals with the right stakeholders and resources. Another very important feature of cloudification is the scalability, agility, and the innovation around service delivery, right? Earlier, I shared with you kind of an example of when we are trying to bring connectivity, let's say, to a building, to a community, to an area. What are some of the things that need to be enabled? But I specifically want to focus on the supply chain, right? So we work with global partners for our supply chain requirements. And last year had been quite a ride and quite a learning that how do we actually procure those materials, whether we get it from this source and another source, when the piece of the material is arriving, what type of resources and the skill sets we need to utilize that piece of equipment at the right time. And I want to share one specific example. When we do the buried on the underground build, everything, our fiber cable is secured in a conduit, which is a PVC pipe. And an efficient way is to actually have the PVC pipe and run the cable in it at the same time so that you're not doing multiple truck rolls. Guess what? Last year, it was very difficult to procure all those material items at the same time. So we had to, through the cloud-based applications, and I talked about the API library that we have that allowed that seamless connectivity and the information flow from multiple vendors into TELUS ecosystem. We were able to keep our operations going based on when which material was available and when it was shipped, because we could see it and then we could line up the right resources at the right time. So I think having that type of environment in a single platform that can invite multi-tenants has really helped us, one, keep going during the time when a lot of our friends in the industry were announcing publicly that they're going to reduce their capital plan because of the supply chain issues and inability to deliver on that committed plan. We did not just deliver on that, we actually injected an extra $1.5 billion in the last 2 years into that plan. So I think cloud-based applications have definitely enhanced a strong foundation which is already in place for our operations.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk to you about customer service as well and how that might have been changed as a result of cloud technology. And then I'll go to Matt for something we all really want to talk a little bit about, cybersecurity. So Shazia, tell me a little bit about, customer service.
Yeah, I think, as I said, we are a customer-focused organization. Our commitment is to give our customers choice, flexibility, reliability, and a seamless experience. And let's talk about choice first, because that's where the cloud-based applications play a very, very important role. A number of my fellow panelists have talked about how pandemic has propelled digitization. But digitization and choice go hand in hand, right? The customers want to have a choice that how they want to interact with us, how they want to place order, and how do they want to get the fulfillment. Cloud-based applications have allowed us the continuity of engagement between various channels. Like, for example, our customers can start their engagement in a TELUS store or on a website, can take the next step in another channel. For example, if they start in a store, they can pick that up on TELUS.com through our web channel, or they can call into our call center, and we will know that where were they in the journey. And it's only possible because previously isolated functions and systems and platforms now are talking to each other and passing on the information from one to another. We have a huge focus on humanized digitization, where each future interaction with the customers is informed by the previous. And that's only possible when we are living in an ecosystem where that information is gathered in the right format, and based on AI, that information is actually used to create better outcome and a more pleasant experience for our customers. The third aspect is around the full integration of delivery of service from order to fulfillment to delivery. Like, for example, our customers today can go on TELUS.com, can select a device of their choice, can select the right data plan for them, and then can have that handset delivered to their home within days. Right? And all that requires a lot of back and forth of the information. And that's only possible when we are in that type of environment and a shared platform. And the last one, which is very important to us, which is reliability of service. And people living in the West, especially living in BC, have seen that how the reliability of service has been challenged through those weather events last year. So through those cloud-based application, integration of systems and the flow of information, we are working very closely with the governments now, where we can have a plan around the readiness and how to protect the infrastructure, very important infrastructure across various industries, to make sure that the connectivity and the safety of customers and residents is of paramount priority during those events. But that was only possible when we are able to share that information seamlessly in a timely manner and layer upon AI to create better outcomes for us.
Mm-hmm. So we're just about 9-ish minutes from before we can take questions from the audience. And I'll get Matt to talk about cybersecurity and Kin to maybe talk a little bit about, if we have a little bit of time there, to talk about, some shortages in the cybersecurity space in general and that kind of a thing. So Matt, tell me about what are the challenges that, cloud-based solutions present when it comes to cybersecurity?
I think we should really be thinking about securing cloud environments in two distinct ways. One is we need to think about how do we reduce the likelihood of a cybersecurity or an attack taking place in the first place. And that's through things like with really good cyber hygiene, right? So Ken talked a little bit about misconfigurations in the cloud. How do we monitor our cloud environments to look for those misconfigurations? How do we benchmark our cloud environments to make sure that they're up to standards? And how do we do things like train our employees to make sure that they're not being a source of a cloud breach? So number one, it's like the preventative method, right? How do we reduce the likelihood that cloud is going to be an aspect of our attack surface that's going to let the criminal in through the front door and give them the keys to our kingdom? The second thing that we have to do is we have to be really good at detecting and responding to an intruder should they enter our cloud environment. So this is if we do end up being a victim of a breach, what can we do to make sure that's detected very, very quickly and get that intruder out? And that involves really taking all the information generated by our cloud systems and monitoring it 24/7 and really presenting a really security-focused point of view in terms of that data to make sure that we're detecting and really setting up tripwires, making sure that if anyone is in their environment, we're very, very quick to remove them. So if we're doing those two things, that's how we ultimately reduce the risk presented by the cloud. Now, the challenge with that is, and Kid talked a little bit about cloud not being the silver bullet, is that requires a lot of expertise and skill on behalf of your employees, right? You look at something like the shared responsibility model, there are a lot of things that your cloud vendor can take care of from a security point of view, but a lot of the kind of both configuration and monitoring of your cloud systems is going to fall upon your business to do yourself. And when it comes to hiring security professionals, when it comes to having security expertise, to knowing how to take this vast amount of data coming from your systems to be able to then find it, I call it find the needle in the needle stack, right? Because there's just so much data coming out of these systems. Finding and training and hiring enough people to monitor your systems 24/7, that could be a genuine challenge. Even if cloud isn't the way an intruder gets in, it's likely that cloud is going to be a component of how they, exploit your systems, right? So one of your employees receives a suspicious email, hey, click on this link, you'll get a free gift card to Starbucks or something, right? That person may hand over the credentials to their system, and although cloud wasn't the way in, that person's now credentials are stolen, and all those cloud systems may now, attacker may have access to. So even if cloud isn't the way in, it still needs to be monitored, and it needs to be monitored 24/7 by security experts to make sure that is actually taking place. So you're not, the victim of ransomware or data breach or anything like that. So that's where vendors like Arctic Wolf come in. If you can't find talent or you can't find that expertise in-house, you can essentially hire us and we'll come and provide that expertise to your business on your behalf and ultimately work to keep your cloud environment safe.
Before I go to Ken, I want to talk a little bit about the converse of what I asked you. So what are some of the opportunities that come from cloud-based solutions, in relation to cybersecurity? That's actually for you, Matt.
Oh, for me. Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking to Ken. I mean, the reason why I was maybe looking to Ken there is Ken already mentioned one of the big things, which is patching and vulnerability management. So Ken mentioned the Microsoft Exchange vulnerabilities that just happened this year, right? And very quickly those were patched in the cloud systems, but still today there's just a massive amount of Exchange servers out there that are on premise that are sitting there with that vulnerability. And it's really easy for attackers to go and look for those kind of things that exist on on-premise systems. And that vulnerability can then be exploited. That's the intruder's way in the door. And then next thing you know, you are the victim of ransomware, or someone has intercepted a wire transfer, that was coming out of your company. And you're kind of in the media, you're in the news, and you got to go and talk to your board as to why you've been the victim of a breach, right? So cloud presents all these really great opportunities to be more secure in a lot of ways. And the challenge again is just making sure that you have the staff and the manpower there to make sure that you're able to leverage that technology and leverage all the great features offered by cloud vendors to remain secure.
And I just want to add to that, Tamir, to what Matt's saying, is that with the cloud aspect, there has been more collaboration from the cybersecurity industries in terms of sharing information to actually protect the industry at large. So there's a lot of services that has been built for that, as opposed to in the past, everybody's trying to protect their own.
I'm going to stick with you, Ken. I want to talk to you a little bit about, shortages in the actual talent that when we talk about that, so are there, what's going on? What are we keeping? Because we keep hearing about these shortages in the IT and cybersecurity space. What advice do you have for companies looking to hire and retain talent?
That is a really tough question, because I think if I have the magic answer for that, everybody would be I'll be keeping that to myself. No, I think that the biggest piece is what's attracting people in my view is really purpose of your organization and what is the organization doing. In our case, we have a purpose, which is we're obsessed with member safety. This is the reason why we come up with a new slogan to say driven by good, because we really want to get people to the sense that, look, we're doing things not just for the sake of making money. Actually, we are not, our primary motive, believe it or not, at CAA is not about making money, but it's how do we keep our members safe? How do we help them in the most dire need, right? That's our passion. That's our drive. And to extend that piece, for example, when we talk about using cloud services, and I keep mentioning that's a service, we have something like very close, similar to TELUS Health, which is Maple. Now, Maple is not a service that we built, but Maple is a service now that we can utilize, that we provide for free as part of your CAA membership, right? So without the cloud aspect of that, we will not be able to provide that service. So bring this piece together to sort of say, this is what you get when you're working for CAA helps a bit. We cannot compete on the dollar salary piece, because we know there's a lot of tech companies who are giving a huge amount of money for people. So there is a whole demand for tech people. But the only way we can compete is to actually show our culture, our purpose, our passion as to why we work for the organization. And I think people are driven more towards the passion and purpose of the organization than more just about, I'm there to make a buck. There are people who will still go there to sort of say, I'm there to make money. Great. But I think the piece about being more aware as to why I want to work for this organization actually starts driving people to attract and retain people.
I'll ask you one last question, Ken, and then we'll move on to some audience questions. You already brought this up, but can you tell me a little bit about if there's anything to do with upskilling that can happen to be able to make sure that IT professionals can become cloud experts, and so sort of leveraging them into this space that's really now in demand?
My advice to IT professional is be hands-on. and learn. And the other thing is be curious, try things out, right? Fail. Do not think about that, oh my God, I cannot fail. Fail on that stuff because that's how you're going to learn. Now, the thing about failure is as long as you don't repeat the same failure over and over again, that's called insanity. But if you fail and you learn and you move forward, that's the piece that you have. There are lots of free courses on the web or on the cloud. There are lots of free trial. I'm pretty sure IBM also has free trial accounts where people can try their services. So I encourage people to actually try things out, play with it, understand what's happening. Because if you don't, you're not going to have the ability to upskill yourself. And that really is something that if you talk about digitization or cloud, going to the cloud, that's what has enabled people to actually learn more. There's so many courses available, how to do things. So be curious and learn.
I'm going to take the last 10 minutes of our time now to look at my phone and to see the questions that we've been getting in from the audience that our team has been collecting. And so, they can text it to me. Ken, you're very popular with the audience. Quite a few of the questions have come in for you. But I'll start with the one for Marcus. So are hybrid cloud models with both public and private cloud components inevitable? And, maybe you can tell me a little bit about how people get, company-wide buy-in on cloud-based solutions, how that might happen here.
Yeah, I think hybrid and multi-cloud are inevitable. First of all, multi-cloud, we already have it, right? It's inconceivable when you look at any company that they don't have multiple SaaS providers, at least one IaaS provider, all of those sort of things. I think hybrid cloud also is inevitable for a period of time, but it's very much in the context of the journey that you're trying to achieve. So if you assume that the starting point is that everything exists within your own data centers, then the question is, what is it that you need to achieve? What transformation are you trying to achieve? And what's the best way to go about that? And chances are that the hybrid cloud paradigm, which is having capability in your data center or your environments, as well as in a different provider's environments, be that a cloud service provider or a partner or whatever that happens to be, it's about meeting the business where they need to be in order to achieve the outcome you're looking for. And if that means going and grabbing the latest cool widget from IBM or from Google or from somewhere else, then that is how that hybrid cloud and that multi-cloud environment will start to expand. The trick to it, as the other panelists have already touched on, is making sure you're doing that with a continual risk and compliance management perspective and not exposing yourselves to potential security threats.
So we're just a little bit over 8 minutes out now. And again, as I said, Ken, you were very popular with the audience. So 2 questions for you. The first one is, can you discuss network and cloud latency times and how this impacts transaction processing?
I mean, maybe the person from Telshaz can talk about that from the network. Listen, when you do move away from, if you have your own data center and you start saying, okay, I'm going to move that service onto the cloud, you do have to take into account latency. It's just laws of physics that, you have distance that's come into play. You have more hops that you have to go through. So you need to measure that. You need to time it. I'm not going to tell you that if you go to the cloud, there won't be any latency. There will be latency. The question is, how much of the latency can you tolerate? How much of the latency can your application tolerate? So you have to test, right? There is no simple answer that says, okay, move to the cloud, it's all going to be fine. Now, you still have bandwidth piece that you talk. The way I look at bandwidth, it's like a water pipe. So you have a small pipe, you try to put a whole pool of water into it. It's going to take a long time to get that flow through. You have the bigger pipe, it's going to get faster. So you need to time it. You need to test. At the end of the day, you need to test your application, how it behaves, and what the implication would be.
Shazia, do you want to comment on that a little bit? And there's a question for you as well. Can you discuss network and cloud latency times and how this impacts transaction processing?
Yeah, I think Ken touched upon a couple of really good points. So one is that the distance is really important, right? So, and when we think about the latency, I think we also need to be very thoughtful that where can we afford a little bit higher tolerance for it, and where do we need to prioritize certain transactions which are less tolerant to higher latency, right? And then also, I think, Marcus, you touched upon that, right? The strategic a partnership and expansion of it between TELUS and IBM, where we are actually trying to bring that computing closer to where the information is being gathered, right? So if you can reduce that distance, and edge computing is a really good example of that. So that will actually help us to overcome some of that latency. And then as the evolution of the network technology happens, and especially with 5G applications, we are going to see the high data processing speeds becoming more and more of a reality. And hopefully with this next spectrum auction, which will bring the millimeter wave applications to the materialization, that will also help us with the speed of the exchange of the data.
Shazi, I'll stick with you for this one as well. What's your advice for business leaders trying to get buy-in from employees on using new cloud-based solutions?
Oh, I love that question. And I'm really going to piggyback what Kin was already laying out when we talk about the war of talent. I think part of the war of talent is the retention of your current employees as well, right? And he touched upon a number of very, very useful things, having the social aspect of the workplace and the engagement and the connection of values between the workplace and the employees. But another big one is flexibility, right? People are looking for flexibility. The way we have worked, our children or the next generation is not going to work that way, right? And when we think about how the economies are progression, and I'm quickly going to remind you of the history a little bit, that people were paid for output right after Industrial Revolution. That over the many decades changed towards payment for time, right? So we got trained that, hey, you come at 9 o'clock, you go at 5 o'clock, and whatever you achieve within that, you're just getting paid for it. We are moving moving back again to output-based recognition and reward, right? And people are looking for flexibility, that when can they work, where can they work, right? How they can work. And they just cannot do it without having the right collaboration tool and cloud-based applications in hand. So the road to buy-in is only going to happen if we actually invite employees to be part of designing the solution, right? Because today there are so many different solutions available and there are so many different features and applications. But what's really important for your own corporate culture and for your own employees, we need to learn it from them and make it part of the solution.
Hey, so we're just about 2 minutes out, and I'm going to get you, Matt, to sort of end it off with this one last question. What is your advice for people entering this industry? And if you could maybe throw in a little bit about cybersecurity, that would be good too.
Sure. I think Ken already had a great point, which is there's a ton of stuff out there existing that can really help you go online to start on your journey to being either a cloud practitioner or a cloud security practitioner. Being curious and going out there and using the tools, it's a great way to do so. If you're interested particularly in cybersecurity, you can look up tools like Kali Linux or things to go start experimenting with yourself. Try to breach yourself. Try to breach your own systems. Try to configure something and then see if you can exploit that configuration to gain access, right? It is a hands-on field, and the best way to learn is by doing so and being around other people who have that experience. So seek experience, seek examples, and seek vendors like IBM who will let you play with their technology to learn.
And Kali Linux is free, so it doesn't cost you a single cent.
That's right.
Okay, we have to leave it there. On behalf of the Globe and Mail, I would really like to thank you guys, Shazia, Marcus, Ken, Matt. You've been really helpful, and thank you so much for joining us today. I would also like to thank everyone in the audience for attending and for all the great questions. And of course, IBM for supporting today's webcast. We will be sharing a link to the recorded webcast in about 1 week.
So thank you for joining us here today. The video recording of this webcast will be available and sent to you in about 2 weeks through your email that you used to register. And I do want to thank everybody again, to all the panelists for bringing forward their own unique perspectives. And what we heard and learned is that the experience for every organization has been very different. And we all have found our own little niche in terms of utilizing this evolution to make things better for our communities, customers, and fellow citizens.
I'm glad I left. I left that extra minute there for that freeze there. Thank you so much, Shasi. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you. I'm glad it happened right at the end. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's panel.
You're most welcome.
Thank you all.